Question 2. To whom was Torah given, and who is required or allowed to follow it? Answer. Recall that the Torah was historically given to Israel nearly 3,500 years ago. But realize that Israel's post-Egypt beginnings include both native-born sons of Jacob, as well as those mixed racial multitudes that God delivered out of Egypt during the Passover. In other words, Israel is not all Jewish. Israel's not made up of all Jews. Exodus 12, verse 37 and 38. Verse 37 says, "And the people," I'm reading out of the ESV version, "And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Sukkot, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children." Verse 38, "A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds." End quote. Right here in the book of Exodus, we see that a mixed multitude came out of Egypt with the native-born sons of Jacob. Right? The mixed multitude referenced here means a mixed multitude, a mixture of ethnicities. Not only native-born sons of Jacob left Egypt in the Exodus. Rather, a mixed multitude, the verse says, also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. So let's continue reading my answer. These two groups, the two groups meaning native-born sons of Jacob and the other group, the other ethnicities. I'm grouping these. I'm lumping these two groups together. These two groups, as it were, came to the foot of Mount Sinai. They received the words of God, and they were collectively called Israel by the text. Read the Exodus narratives carefully again. So let me jump back over. We already read Exodus 12, 37, and 38. Now let's jump all the way down to Exodus 19 for a second. And it says, verse 1, quote, "On the third new moon after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came into the wilderness of Sinai." Right? It says they set out from Rephidim and came to the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel camped before the mountain, while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, "Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob and tell the people of Israel." And then it continues. So that's the opening dialogue of the giving of the Torah to this group of people who were collectively gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai. And then, of course, we all know Exodus chapter 20 is the giving of the 10 words, the Asarat HaDevarim, the 10 commandments. And God spoke all these words, saying, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." Verse 1 and 2. Question, did God only bring native-born sons of Jacob out of slavery, out of the land of Egypt? No. He also delivered the mixed multitude. Anyone who put their faith in the blood of the physical lamb, the animal, the lamb that was slain that night, and the blood was placed on the doorpost and the lintels. You're all familiar with the story, or you've watched the TV or the movie series, 10 Commandments or Prince of Egypt or one of those things. And so you're familiar with how the Exodus and the Passover worked. But the point I'm trying to emphasize is that the Torah was not given only to native sons of Jacob. That's the point I'm trying to emphasize. All right? Paul later reveals, as I continue in my answer here, Paul later reveals that the mystery of the gospel, quote unquote, is that according to Romans 11 and Ephesians chapters 2 and 3, and specifically Ephesians 6:19, Gentiles are grafted into the commonwealth of Israel via Messiah. They're actually grafted into remnant Israel specifically, but remnant Israel resides within greater national Israel. So it's like a circle within a circle. So Gentiles are grafted into the commonwealth of Israel via Messiah, and these Gentiles become fellow heirs, sharing in the richness of the root of the olive tree, and in doing so they inherit the blessings that are spelled out in the Torah for all of obedient Israel. Does that make sense? So the paradigm of God giving the Torah to not only native-born sons of Jacob, which the Hebrew would call them Ezrach, not only to these native-born sons of Jacob, but the Torah was also given to this mixed multitude as the group collectively gathered at Mount Sinai that day to receive the Torah, God's teachings. It is because of that, therefore, as I finish in this particular question, therefore, since Israel is actually a multi-ethnic entity, the Torah is actually applicable. The Torah actually applies to all who name the name of the Lord as their one and only God. This naturally includes Gentile believers in Yeshua.